Okay, so this is another little activity that I've been researching and I thought you guys might like to have a go at it. We're going to use some natural objects, some flowers, some leaves. Now I'm really spoiled. I've got a beautiful garden and I could walk around and in 5 minutes pick all of these because they're mine. Please don't go and pick flowers that aren't yours. And although you can see here I've got a really big pile of them, you won't need anywhere near as many as these. I've just shown you these to see what kinds of things you can use. Some of them you should be able to find anywhere. You're allowed 1 walk a day at the moment, so keep your eyes open on the side. This is just some grass, just some long grass. Take a little baggie with you and you can collect some bits like that. These leaves are actually from some bluebells that haven't come up yet. This is a little dandelion head, it's all closed up. That's a weed. You might find that in the path or next to the path somewhere. Sometimes I didn't want to pick my whole daffodils because I don't have many in my garden. I just took 1 petal. That's probably all you're going to need for this. These are some very beautiful hellebores. You won't find those everywhere. This is from a bush of mine called a camellia. And it's actually a very heavy flower. And you can see it started to go a bit brown and rotten because I found this flower on the floor. It had already fallen off. But because for this activity I'm just going to need the petals, I'm going to be able to pull one out and use it. Again, a few selections of different leaves and things. Just see what you can find. Don't pick without asking, and you only need a small bit for this activity. Okay, that one's particularly spectacular. I planted those last year. I've even got some daisies out of my lawn, and this is little wildflower as well. So depending on what size you're going to do, you'll be able to find a little bit of colour somewhere. Even if it's just grass, I think this is a fun activity. This smells gorgeous. It's a little bit of mint from my garden, so when we do this, this is going to smell all nice and minty. Right, before we get started, I just want to have a little quick talk about paper, because I know if you guys are stuck at home, you might be thinking I don't have all the things that Mrs. T is using. I'm a big fan of keeping envelopes. When your mum and dad get the post, or somebody gets the post, you keep the envelope, you can open it up. It has a really interesting pattern on the inside. I'm going to do a little activity soon using these windows to make little windows to go on ours, to make little stained glass. So just look around you, see what's in your recycling bin. There might be something you can use. You don't have to do everything I do, you just adapt it to suit you. Right, so the reason this activity I think is really fun is A, we're coming up to Easter and it's spring and our gardens outside are looking beautiful. So it might be nice to make something to do with that. It also is nearly Easter, or there's a lot of people at the moment that we can't see and spend time with. So I thought this would be a lovely way to make an Easter card or a card just to say hello to somebody. The actual picture you're going to make, you'd probably need to cut out at the end and put onto a separate card. So I'm going to show you what this is going to be. This is a very silly activity. I'm going to fold this piece of paper first because I'm only going to do a little one, and it means I can make a little picture here. Then, just like I said, I'm going to start choosing some of those petals. Now what you don't want for this activity is you really don't want that middle bit of the flower that's really juicy, because we're going to squash them. Doesn't sound very nice, does it? We're going to squash them and hopefully use the colour from the petals to print onto our page. And that little middle bit of the flower, can you see how I've plucked them off and left them behind? That middle bit makes too much of a mess. Okay, so can you see I'm just trying to arrange them? I'm going to try and arrange them to look like a flower. It might not work, we'll see. I'm going to speed this bit up and do a little picture. Okay, so I've only used a very small amount of the flowers I've got there. I've used a little bit of grass, I haven't used any leaves this time. We're going to have several goes at this. Now then, this is the really fun bit. You can see I've laid this out really carefully, and you're going to have to be very careful with what you do. It might move around. You just have to have those happy mistakes. I'm going to fold my piece of paper now back over those flowers and try and hold them tight so they don't move. Now this is where the silly fun bits comes in. You can do this outside, by the way, if you want to, in the back garden, somewhere safe. I've bought a little chopping board here. I'm going to put my little packet there with my picture still inside it. And I've been into my toolbox and found a hammer. Now you need to make sure you've got some supervision for this. Please don't go and get tools without asking. If you can't find a hammer to use, you can try using something else. Heavy and solid, like a stone, a rolling pin. I've got a tin of beans here. I think you could do it with that. Even some toy hammers would work really, really well. And what you're going to do, as gently and as carefully as possible, is we're going to smash our flowers, and hopefully that will squash all the petals and the colour will print onto our page. So this bit takes a little bit while. I'm going to speed it up. It's also very noisy, but have fun. This is the reason we're doing this. So as I'm tapping, I don't know if you can see clearly on the camera, the moisture, the water from the flowers is starting to come through, and it's almost letting me see where they are. So when I'm finding one, I'm going around that area and making sure I've got every little bit of it. I'm going to keep going for just a little bit longer to make sure I've got all of my picture. Okay? Okay, so I tapped really carefully. I kept my fingers out of the way and I went round and round and round. I wasn't banging it really, really hard. Just tap, 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 tap. Now the next bit's messy. When I open it up, all those flowers are going to be smashed and stuck to each side. Let's show you. Okay, and at the moment it just looks like a horrible mess, and this is where you're going to have to be a little bit patient. Some of the easy bits to pull off, can you see how this piece of grass is sticking out the side? I can hold it still and take that bit off and put it straight in the bin. I'll find a bin, right. So anything that's really easy to take off without making a mess of your picture, you can gently pull some of the big bits of squashed flower off. Okay, so I've got the worst of those off, but as you can see, if I hold it up close to you, there's still some bits of the petals left on there. I think that grass has made beautiful patterns, and this flower here. Okay, and as you can see, because I folded my paper, I've actually ended up with two pictures. Those big pink petals, they made this very wet mark here, and actually I haven't got that nice pink colour I was hoping for. So the next stage is where you have to be a little bit patient. We need to let that dry before we can take off any more of the petals and before we can do anything with it. Now, because I've got a big pile of things I managed to collect, I'm going to try a few more. So you might want to choose whatever you want to do, and we'll come back to this when it's dry. Hi, well I'm going to show you how to finish off your squash flower pictures now, or one way. You can do whatever you like with them, obviously. Where they've dried now, I can pick off those last little bits of petal or little scrunched up leaf. They don't look such a nice colour. Just be careful, because obviously where it was very wet, there might be, your paper might be a bit delicate. When there were extra ones, I tried a little bit even on that patterned piece of envelope, and that came out quite well. Okay, so I'm just going to tidy those up and then we'll get going. So I don't know if you can see there, some of the bits I could piggle off. I can still see a little bit there. And some of them I just had to give them a little rub, and the little bits of plant that are still stuck to the surface come away. You can see I was worried about that pink flower, but it has actually given me almost an orangey colour now. Keep finding more bits of grass stuck to it. You'll have more time than me, won't you? So you can leave it like a mirror image. It looks almost like a butterfly there, doesn't it? Or you can get your scissors and cut it into 2 pictures, and then you've got 2 cards, maybe to send to 2 people or to try 2 different things with. I'm going to work with this one because I think it's quite interesting the way it's left some white spaces and not printed there. And I'm going to show you what my idea is. So one idea is you can use a pen or a pencil and add a little bit more definition to your picture. Where there's something really nice and pretty like the grass and that flower there, that's fine. I'm not going to do a lot like that, but I'm going to add just a few little doodles to turn this into a more interesting picture. I'm thinking those 2 daffodil petals there look almost like wings, and this could be a bumblebee's body. Then I've got a flower here, and I'm going to turn that white patch into a white flower. And where these orangey ones are here, I might go for more of a lily or a leaf and put that up there. Okay, so I'm going to doodle away. Again, I'm going to speed it up because it might be a bit boring to watch. Okay, so you can see how that looks a little bit more like a bee. You might have a bit more time than me. You might choose to use coloured pens or anything to turn that into a picture. I've seen people do lots of different things if you don't want to keep it as a nature picture. I've seen people turn them into creatures or monsters. This one looks a little bit more interesting, doesn't it? That looks a bit like a mouth there, can you see? So maybe I'm going to make that into like an angry monster. Okay, so just see what you can see in the pictures. Got big feet, my monster. Remember those happy accidents. You don't want to colour up all your flower smash that you've done, do you? You might be able to turn it into a little angry creature. I've seen people turn them. I love this one. This one came out beautifully. That was that really big, beautiful pansy. And that one particularly, I think, would make a lovely card, that one where it's really nice and dark. I think somebody's auntie or grandma would think that was really special. If you wanted to turn these edge ones into flowers a bit more, I might not use a pen this time. I might just go and put the extra petals in with a pencil so that I'm not ruining what's really come out as quite a nice picture anyway. This one I wanted to try something that I'd seen, which was somebody had turned it into a little fairy, because obviously this looks like the wings here. And then she could maybe have like a purple flowery dress on. Can't claim to be the best at drawing fairies, obviously. You might be a lot better at it than I am. You might give her some big purple curly hair. Very round head. So, it's up to you. You might want to turn them into a flower fairy. You might want to just leave them as they are. Enhance them. Or just be inspired and turn them into a silly flower monster. Have fun smashing your flowers.